All right, so today we're going to go over factoring trinomials, and first we're going to talk about greatest common factor. So remember, greatest common factor is the biggest number that you can divide into every term that you have. So if you're looking at 5x squared, 15x, and 10, what is the biggest number you can divide into all three of those? 5. So I'm going to factor out a 5. And remember, when you factor something out, you're just dividing it. So I've got 5x squared divided by 5 is x squared. 15x divided by 5 is 3x. And 10 divided by 5 is 2. And then you would continue on with your factoring after that. But that's how you would take out a greatest common factor. So if you look at number 2, what's the greatest common factor between 4 and 8? 4. But then you also have an x squared here and an x to the first here. So how many x's can I factor out? 1. I can't take more than what I have, correct? So if I have 2 x's here and 1 x here, I can take the smallest number out. So let's say that I had like this. I have x to the fourth, x to the third, x to the second. I can remove 2, so an x squared, from every single term, right? So when I do that, 4x squared divided by 4x is x, thank you. And negative 8x divided by 4x is negative 2, right? And there you have it, greatest common factor. All right, so this next part should be review for you, but we're still going to go over it again like we have forgotten. All right, so when I'm factoring a trinomial, notice I said a trinomial. That means that there are 3 terms with an x squared, an x, and no x. Then I have some rules that help you figure out what numbers go where and what signs you have. So when you have a plus at the back of your trinomial, you're going to look up at the front and you have 2 of whatever sign is in the front. So the way I factor a trinomial is it breaks up into 2 binomials, all right? That means 2 terms in each one, right? So I've got a plus sign in the back. That means each binomial will have a plus sign. This plus sign in the back, though, when I look up front, I have a minus sign, so I will have 2 minus signs. Whenever there's a minus at the back, it doesn't matter what's in the front. You just automatically have 1 plus and 1 minus every single time, okay? And then we'll go over the rest of that in just a second. So let's say that I have x plus 2 and x minus 4. And I'm going to multiply that together. So I have x times x is x to the second. And then I have x times negative 4 is negative 4x. And 2 times x is 2x. And then 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. And then I put my middle terms together, correct? Because negative 4x plus 2x would give me a negative 2x. So I end up with this. Which is a trinomial, correct? And you guys have multiplied plenty of binomials together at this point. So I want to point a couple of things out. Your front 2 numbers always multiply to make the front number. So x times x gives you x squared. And the back numbers always multiply to make the back number. The middle number, right here, this negative 2x, is made up of the outside and the insides added together. So when I think about the numbers that I want, I'm going to have to think about the front, the back, and the middle. So First, you're going to look at your trinomial and you're going to say to yourself, do you have any common factors? And the answer to that is no. So I'm going to go ahead and split this into two binomials. So I look at the back and I say, okay, I have a plus sign. That means 2 of whatever's in the front. So I have a plus sign and a plus sign. Now to get an x squared, then I would have to have an x times an x. That would make x squared, correct? And at the back, these two numbers have to multiply to make 2, correct? Now the only thing that multiplies to make 2 is 2 and 1. Okay, we're going to have a lot more options later. But I want these two numbers, make sure you're paying attention, to add and make 3. Do 2 and 1 add together to make 3? Yes, so that's the two numbers I'm going to use. And then I'm done. So if I multiplied this back together, I would end up with this in return. So look at number 4. Do we have any common factors? No. No. 2 here, but you have to have that factor with all 3. Okay, so I don't have a common factor. So I'm going to split it into two binomials. I have a plus sign at the back, which means 2 of whatever is up in front. So I'm going to have 2 plus signs. To get that x squared, I have x times x. And the back two numbers have to multiply to make 16. So give me everything that multiplies to make 16. 8 and 2. 4 and 4. There's one more. 16 and 1. Okay, now I have to choose which of these I want, but I want the ones that are going to add to make 10, and that would be 8 and 2. And since these are the same, the parentheses, I got x plus and x plus, it doesn't matter where I put the 8 and where I put the 2. All right, so number 5, any common factors? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and factor this into two binomials. I look back here, and this time I have a negative, so that means I have a positive and a negative inside my parentheses. And then I have the x squared, so x times x. And the back two numbers need to multiply to make 21. So what multiplies to make 21? 1 and 21. 7 and 3, and that's it, right? But I want the one that will, since I have a minus here, subtract to make 4. That would be 7 and 3. Now, these are different, so I have to decide where I should put the 7 and where I should put the 3. So we already know that the outside and the inside add together to make this middle number, and I want it to be a positive 4. So I need to put my 7, because it's bigger, with the positive number. So whatever you want this to be, your bigger number is going to go with that symbol. So if I want it to be a positive 4, then my big number, the 7, has to go with the positive. If this would have been minus 4 right here, then I would have put the 7 with the minus. And then I'm done. All right, number 6, any common factors? Nope, so I'm going to split this into two binomials. I look at the back and I have a minus sign, so that means 1 plus and 1 minus. And then I've got my x squared, so x times x. And now I know the back two have to multiply to make 8. So what multiplies to make 8? 4 and 2, 8 and 1. And I want the combination that will subtract to make 7. That would be 8 and 1. So I look up here and I go, okay, my signs are different. I want the middle to be a positive number, so my bigger number goes with the plus. So 8 will be here, and 1 will be here. Okay, number 7. No common factors, right? So I'm going to split into two binomials. I have a minus in the back. That means what? A positive and a negative. And then to get v squared, I would need v times v. And then these back two numbers have to multiply to make the 42. So tell me what multiplies to make 42. 7 and 6. 2 and 21. 42 and 1. There's one more. $14 and 3. So I need the combination of numbers that will subtract to make 1. So that's 7 and 6. And I want this middle number to be negative, so therefore I'm going to put the bigger number with the minus sign. All right, so we don't have any common factors. I've got a minus in the back, so that's a positive and a negative. And then we have our x squared, so x and x. And then everything that multiplies to make 15. We've just got 15 and 1, 5 and 3. And I want the one that will subtract to make 2. That would be 5 and 3. And I want the middle to be positive, so I'm going to put the 5 with the positive and the 3 here. All right, no common factors. I have a plus in the back, so that means 2 of what's up here. So 2 minus signs. And then you've got your x and your x. And there's only 2 numbers that multiply to make 3. That would be 3 and 1. And do those add to make 4? Yes. And it doesn't matter where we put those. So if you put the 1 here and the 3 here, that's fine. As long as you have both of these, you are good to go. So when we have a number in the front, like in front of this x squared, we're going to use what we call the illegal move, okay? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to take that leading coefficient right there, and you're going to multiply it by the constant at the back. So that I'm moving it, right, illegally. So that would give me 4 times 3, which is 12. So now we don't have a number up here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and factor it like we've been doing. So I look back here, and I've got a plus. So I'm going to look up front. I'm going to have 2 plus signs. And then I have my x squared, so x times x. And then I need 2 numbers that are going to multiply to make 12. So 3 and 4, 6 and 2, 12 and 1. But I need the pairing that will add to make 13. That would be 12 and 1. So it doesn't matter where I put the 12 and where I put the 1. Now, normally we would be done right here because we factored, but the problem is if I multiplied this together, I would not get this in return. X times x is x squared, not 4x squared, right? So you have to undo what you did up here. You multiplied by 4, so now you have to divide by 4. You're going to divide both of these numbers back here by 4. So if it reduces, you should always reduce. 12 divided by 4 is 3. But 1 over 4, that doesn't reduce at all, right? So you're going to take that number that's on the bottom, which happens to be a 4, and you're going to move it in front of the x in that parenthesis. So you get 4x plus, and then you just leave the 1 back here. And then that is your answer. So take a look at number 11. First, always look to see if you have a common factor. Do I have a common factor? No. So I see that I have a number in front. That's a problem. So I'm going to multiply it times the back. That gives me x squared minus 7x plus 6. Then I'm going to go ahead and factor. Look back there, you have a plus sign. That means you look up front, and you'll have 2 minus signs. And then you've got your x times your x to get the x squared. And then you need 2 numbers that will multiply to make the 6 and add to make 7. 6 and 1. And since your signs are the same, it doesn't matter where you put your 6 and where you put your 1. And once you get that factored, you have to remember to divide by that number in the front that you multiplied by. So I'm going to divide by 3. And reduce. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 1 does not divide by 3, and it also does not reduce, right? So I'm going to pull the 3 in front of the x, so I get 3x minus 1. So if you look at number 12, first thing you're going to check for is a greatest common factor. Do you have a greatest common factor? 2. Think bigger.
4.
4. So I can factor out a 4, so I'm going to do that. 4x squared divided by 4 is x squared. 32x divided by 4 is 8x. And 60 divided by 4 is 15, right? Now what that did for us, number 1, it cut all of our numbers down, right? And number 2, we no longer have a number in front of our x squared, correct? So when I factor it, I don't have to worry about multiplying. Let's say that you didn't catch that. You would multiply by 4, right? Which would give you 240. And that's a huge number, right? Not to say that you won't ever get a huge number, but that's big. And when you factor, you're going to end up with something that's not completely factored. Like you might end up with like something that you could take a 4 out of, okay? So you want to make sure that you take out the common factor before you do anything else, so always check for that. So the 4 is just going to chill out front while you factor this trinomial that you have inside here. So I look and I've got a plus, so that means 2 of whatever is up here. So I have 2 plus signs, and then to get that x squared, I've got x times x. And then I need 2 numbers that multiply to make 15 and add to make 8. 3 and 5, right? And it doesn't hurt to write them out to the side. In fact, I probably prefer you do that just so you don't forget, especially if you have like a bigger number that has more than 2 sets, right? So those will add to make 8. And since these are both the same, it doesn't matter where I put the 5 and where I put the 3, but make sure you leave that 4 out front. All right, so number 13, I don't have any common factors, but I do have a negative on this front term, and that's a problem. I don't want this first term to ever be negative. So if it's negative, you need to factor a negative out. All right, and that's just like taking out a -1, correct? So if I divided everything by a -1, all that does is changes the signs. So now my 4x squared is positive. My -8x is now positive 8x, and my 5 is now -5. So this negative is going to chill while you factor what's inside here. Since there's a number in the front, you're going to have to do the illegal move. So take the 4 times the 5. That gives me x squared plus 8x minus 20. And now you're going to factor that just like we've been doing. I look at the back and I have a minus sign, so that means 1 positive and 1 negative. I got to get my x squared, so x and x. And then I'm looking for 2 numbers that will multiply to make the 20, but also subtract to make 8. That would be 10 and 2. And since you want this positive number in the middle, you need to put the 10 with the plus and the 2 with the minus. Now once you get factored, you got to divide by that 4 in the front. So this is going to be a little bit different because do either of these actually divide by 4 evenly? No, but they do reduce. 10 over 4 reduces to 5/2. You have to reduce it before moving the bottom number. Are y'all with me? And you could reduce it right here if you wanted to and not write a whole step, but I'm doing it for notes. So second one, 2 over 4 reduces to 1/2. So always reduce first. Now, since they didn't divide evenly, take the number on the bottom and move it in front of the x. So I have the negative outside, 2x plus 5. And then same thing over here. Take the 2 on the bottom and move it in front of the x. So I get 2x minus 1. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is take out a negative. So that's just going to change everything I have to a positive, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't have any common factors, correct? But I am going to have to do the illegal move because I have this number out front. So 2 times 3, that's going to give me 6.
Oh, man.
And then I factor. So plus in the back means 2 of what's in the front. Got my x and my x. Now you got to be careful because for the multiplying of 6, there's 2 of them. You have to make sure you pay attention to that symbol because if you aren't and you think, oh yeah, that subtracts to make 5, but you don't want the one that subtracts to make 5, you want the one that adds. So 3 and 2. And then once you get that done, then you've got to undo multiplying by that 2. So I'm going to divide by 2. Okay, 3 over 2, that doesn't reduce, correct? So I pull the 2 forward, and I have 2x plus 3. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I have x plus 1.
And if you ever shoot